Now, of course, fans have taken to social media as well to try and remember Bob Mabena as well as much as possible. SABC News reporter Ofense Sitimo joins us as well outside of Mabena's home in Centurion. Ofense, one can imagine that it's not just social media that is abuzz, but certainly even friends, family, as well as those within the area close to the family home.
Absolutely, Arabile. We're coming to you from the residence of Mr. Bob Mabena, and just now a staff contingent from Power FM just left, and they actually described a man who's actually taught them a lot, who actually had time to actually teach them a lot. And as you rightfully mentioned in your intro, a lot of people actually took to social media, making Bob Mabena to actually trend at #1 in yesterday afternoon. And in fact, today when I checked my timeline, it was actually at #2. But actually to talk to someone who was actually touched by the profession of Mr. Bob Mabena is a media expert, Albi Modise, who says apparently his first interaction with Bob was when Bob was 19 at the Radio Bob. Thank you so much for your time, sir, and condolences for the loss.
Thanks, Offense. I think it's a sad day for radio in South Africa. It's a sad day for the entertainment industry, but it's a sad day for South Africans in general. For a gentleman who gave his time, his talent, and his knowledge to the nation, cutting his teeth in 1989 at the erstwhile Radio Bob Botswana, moving to national stardom at Metro, and also transitioning to stations that were predominantly meant for white audience, like Highveld. In 1996, that was at a time when South Africa was going through a transition at that time, and the new owners of the station wanted to acquire black presenters on the station, and they went for reputable Bob Mabena. And to me, he symbolizes resilience. He symbolizes what the focus and the energy of modern urban radio. But in the main, it's also a reflection on how dedicated he was to the craft, how much he loved the craft. But beyond that, he was also an executive who, over the many years, served the SABC, for an example, as an executive in charge of commercial radio, prime media broadcasting, where he was an executive as well. So he was a well-rounded presenter, he was a well-rounded executive, he was a well-rounded strategist, he was a musician. He had different sides to himself, but in the main, as a human being, he was a very sober and a very diligent, unassuming gentleman.
Yeah. And you did mention that he started his career at a very young age. For aspirant black would-be media personalities during the 80s, what did he do to inspire them, especially you personally?
Look, I can tell you, I was in high school when I first heard him on Radio Bob doing breakfast, and I was quite chuffed that a gentleman not that many years older than me, he was about 19 or so, I was about 16 or so, very enthusiastic about radio at that point. Still I am, and in him, some of my generation, we saw ourselves. So when he went from Bob, a very small radio station but very influential in terms of the radio landscape, to move to Radio Metro under the tutelage of Koos Hadebe, his tentacles spread across the nation. He arrived at a time when Metro was moving nationwide on FM. Previously, it had been largely predominantly on medium wave. So he arrived at the right time. And the star of Bob grows, the radio station itself, Radio Metro, became phenomenal. And he was one of the most sought after radio items in the country at that point. And he continued to remain relevant throughout until his passing just yesterday.
And the void that his absence will leave to the radio and TV industry itself.
Look, if you look at it, this is a gentleman who started his career in 1989. After auditions, the managers at Radio Bob gave him drive time, 3 to 6 in the afternoon. He's been doing those ever since. 3 to 6 in the afternoon, 6 to 9 in the morning. That's staying power. Not many people can retain that for that long. A lot of people fizzle out after a few 2-3 years or so, they're off. I think he had that staying power. He was able to reinvent himself. He was able to read his audience. He was able to do that because he was able to move from Radio Bob to Radio Metro, from Metro to Highveld, from Highveld to Kaya FM to Power. And those are different audiences. And the ability to understand your audience, to understand and know what they want to hear, it takes a lot of intelligence and a lot of studying and a lot of keenness to want to know that, for a presenter of that particular nature to really reach his audience at that level. And I think for me, the legacy that he leaves is that of a very rich tapestry, radio history, contribution to busting the myths about radio, moving from one program format to another. Radio Metro was nothing like Highfield Stereo, but he was able to do that. And I think his last career now with Power FM, it shows that the guy who started at the nightclub spinning discs ended up being a talk show host. He was that resilient, he was that intelligent. Music has Michael Jackson, radio has Bob Mabena.
Thank you so much. That was media expert Mr. Albi Modise, who's also the spokesperson of the Environmental Affairs Department, actually saying that Bob Mabena's void will be felt across the media landscape, as he had this staying power to stay in the industry for the past 31 years. And with that, it's back to studio.